The Valley's greatest hits, the greatest hits of all time. Rod Wolf's Sunday Night Hall of Fame. Oldies 99.9.
Welcome back to the Bobby Fuller Story in words and music on the Sunday Night Hall of Fame at Oldies 99.9. This is your host, Rod Wolf. We last left the Bobby Fuller 4 in June of 1966 with their new single release produced by Barry White called The Magic Touch. The group was back on tour, this time in more familiar Southwest territory. However, relations among the group members were not getting any better. Fuller was completely frustrated that Bob Keane seemed to be taking over the recorded sound. The other members, who had already been feeling they didn't have enough input into the group, were now ready to walk out. Instead, they voted to finish their tour and wound up with appearances back in New York City, this time at the Cheetah Club. It was then on to Cambridge, Massachusetts for a show that was thrown together in such short order that advertising didn't begin until just a few days before the concert. Booked into an outdoor stadium, only 500 fans showed up. When they got back to California, they next were told that Bob Keane had canceled what was supposed to be a big tour of Europe, where the group was being hailed as the successor to the rockabilly throne of Buddy Holly and the Crickets. With their touring an absolute nightmare and losing control of their sound in the studio, Bobby Fuller decided to go home to El Paso for the July 4th, 1966 holiday. While there, he met with a couple of his original musician friends, including Ty Grimes and Mike Ciccarelli, who told him they were coming out to the San Bernardino area for a gig. Bobby told them he might need them to become part of his group because the current lineup was falling apart. On July 8th, the Bobby Fuller 4 drove to San Francisco for some appearances. And believe it or not, once again they found an underfinanced promoter who had done virtually no advertising for the concert. When they returned to Hollywood, guitarist and original member Jim Reese came home to find his draft notice waiting. His next tour would be a tour of duty in Vietnam. Bobby Fuller drove to San Bernardino to meet Ty and Mike, and it was agreed that they would in turn meet Fuller at the Delphi Studios in the morning of Monday, July 18th. They would be there to discuss the future of the Bobby Fuller 4 with Bob Keane. From this point on, the Bobby Fuller story becomes one of the strangest in rock and roll history. Here is what is known. In the early morning hours of July 18th, around 1 a.m., the phone rang. Bobby Fuller answered the call at the apartment he shared with brother Randy and his mother Lorraine. He chatted with someone for a while, then while still dressed in a robe and slippers, went outside and bumped into Lloyd Essinger, the manager of the apartment building. Lloyd and Bobby drank a couple of beers, and Bobby left around 3 a.m. Lloyd would be the last person to report that he saw Bobby Fuller alive. As the sun was rising that morning, Lorraine Fuller stated she suddenly had a strange feeling about Bobby, got up and found that he had not come home that night. Her car, an Oldsmobile, was also missing. Later that day, Bobby missed his arranged meeting with Delphi Records owner Bob Keane. Musician friends Ty and Mike were there with Keane waiting for Bobby. When he didn't show up, the two friends decided to drive the couple of blocks to Bobby's apartment to see if he was there. Not seeing the Oldsmobile, they wanted to go to his apartment to see if Randy or someone else had heard from him. In later years, Ty remembered that he heard a car pull up behind them as they were climbing the stairs, but they didn't turn around to look back. As the two were going up the front stairs to the Fuller apartment, Bobby's mother, Lorraine, was coming down the back stairs to check the mail. Suddenly, she noticed her car was back in the parking lot, right by Ty and Mike's car. Not being able to see anyone in the Oldsmobile, she walked over to investigate. The windows were all rolled up, and as she opened the driver's door, the immediate smell of gasoline overpowered her. Inside, she saw her son's bruised and battered body lying across the front seat. Bobby's skin and hair had been drenched in the gasoline. Full rigor mortis had set in, an indication that he had been dead at least 3 hours. Witnesses who watched the police remove the body also said his right index finger was broken. It looked to everyone as though he had been in a brutal fight. Despite all the evidence, the police ruled the death was most likely a suicide, and the LA County Coroner's official autopsy report listed the cause of death inconclusive, either an accident or suicide. As far as the actual police investigation, or really lack of investigation, the Oldsmobile was never dusted for fingerprints, and the gas can found in the car was thrown into a nearby dumpster by a Hollywood Division policeman. Brother Randy Fuller's question that day, and to this very day, is, how can a man that's dead with rigor mortis drive his car and then pour gasoline all over himself and down his own throat? That basic, reasonable question has never been answered. For almost 20 years, no one except Bobby's family and close friends questioned either the official police or coroner's reports. But then others began to take notice. The story was featured on Entertainment Tonight in the early 1980s, and in 1996 on the NBC show Unsolved Mysteries. Even more recently, a story about Bobby's bizarre death was the topic on the E! Network series Hollywood's Mysteries and Scandals. Now, over 30 years later, a number of interesting but still unproven theories have been presented. There are over a half dozen or so theories. One of the theories is that Bobby was killed by a jealous ex-boyfriend of a girl Bobby had been seeing more and more of. The boyfriend was not only a nightclub owner, but was also rumored to be connected to organized crime. The girlfriend's name was Melody. She was also a call girl. After Bobby's death, no one could locate her to ask any questions. Melody would not reappear until the 1996 airing of the story on Unsolved Mysteries. Only then, 30 years later, did she come forward to say her boyfriend at the time was not in the mob. Or did Melody wait those 30 years until all the people involved in Bobby's death were also deceased? Last is the theory that Bobby was the victim of a mob hit, but not at the hands of girlfriend Melody's associates. Instead, it was a financial investor in Bob Keane's Delphi Records. Supposedly, there was an $800,000 insurance policy on Bobby, and the investor had recently been told by Keane that it looked like the group was breaking up. Rumors were circulating again that Fuller was going to sign a solo contract with Phil Spector or maybe even Atlantic Records. Did the investor have someone threaten Bobby to make him stay with Delphi? Then perhaps things got out of hand, and the thugs started beating him, and it went too far. Well, there they are, plausible scenarios that have never been investigated by the police. That's right, they've never been investigated. When one of Bobby's uncles drove all the way to Hollywood from Texas to demand an investigation, he was told that if he knew what was good for him, he'd leave town. When Bobby's parents and Bob Keane pulled their finances to hire a private investigator, he quit after only a few days in the case. He had been shot at by a would-be assassin and feared for his life. Well, you know, there's nothing like death to give a rising rock star instant legend status. So with all the questions still being asked about his death, little energy has been used to examine Bobby Fuller's place in rock and roll history. This much is known and acknowledged by music critics. Bobby Fuller was a versatile artist who could tackle everything from the Tex-Mex sound of Buddy Holly and the Crickets to the early British Invasion sound to the West Coast style of surfing and hot rod music. He has been called by some the missing link between the rockabilly of the 1950s and the country rock explosion of the late 60s, with artists like Creedence Clearwater, the Eagles, and Jackson Browne. Unfortunately, the circumstances surrounding his untimely death at the age of 23 will always seem to overshadow the small but impressive body of music Bobby Fuller left behind. It's my hope that by playing some of his long-forgotten songs on this week's Hall of Fame show, that we can finally overcome that obstacle. Ladies and gentlemen, we conclude our tribute to the Bobby Fuller 4 with more of his rarest recordings.
Rod Wolf's Sunday Night Hall of Fame.
Think it over what you just said. Think it over in your pretty little head. Are you sure that I'm not the one? Is your love real or only fun? You think it over, just think it over. A lonely heart grows cold and whole. think it over, just think it over. A lonely heart grows cold and whole. Think it over, think it over. All week long I've been waiting for a Saturday night, when the teen clubs are rocking and stomping with all of their might. I'm gonna throw away my books, all of my studies, so I can drive around with all of my buddies.
Oh, lonely Saturday night.
There's a party going on in a crazy little joint across town. You see them jumping and shaking and they're moving their bodies all around. The band starts playing and the music gets loud. Everybody jumping and they get a big crowd.
Oh, lonely Saturday night.
My head goes around and the band keeps playing through the night. Everything happens from a drag race down to a fight. Nobody cares what the neighborhood says. Keep the party going and they're drinking their best.
Oh, lonely Saturday night.
More than just a game. This is not the same. This is life, come what may. Don't know how I know. Still I know it's so. That this is life, come what may. All at once, I'm quite upset as never before. Every day and every hour, I love you more. Now if only you feel the same way too, then we'll have love, come what may. All at once, I'm quite upset as never before. Every day and every hour, I love you more. Now if only you feel the same way too, then we'll have love, come what may. This is love. Heartaches hanging round my door. Never felt so low before. Painted on my heart is a new shade of blue. Now I know what it's like to cry, what it's like to want to die. is a new shade of blue.
You're listening to the Sunday Night Hall of Fame at Oldies 99.9. This is Rod Wolf with a tribute to the Bobby Fuller Four.
Oldies 99.9.
I hope you enjoyed our tribute to the Bobby Fuller Four on what would have been his 58th birthday today, October 22nd. This is Rod Wolf in the Sunday Night Hall of Fame. We heard Bobby's version of the Buddy Holly song, Think It Over. Then a song he wrote called Saturday Night had that Eddie Cochran sound to it, didn't it? The British music influenced It's Love, Come What May. One of the last songs written and recorded by Bobby, A New Shade of Blue. And the Holly-esque and even Everly Brothers sounding Only When I Dream. That's one of my favorites by the Bobby Fuller Four, the last one I played there. Only When I Dream. The backseat sounds of music for lovers only, and Lovers Lonely is next on the Lehigh Valley's vinyl resting place, the Sunday Night Hall of Fame at Oldies 99.9.
Rod Wolf's Sunday Night Hall of Fame. The Valley's greatest hits of all time. Oldies 99.9.